إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمد عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما ثم أما بعد. Brothers and sisters in Islam, justice, the word justice, is a very popular one. It is a word that flatters whoever uses it. It is a word that grants moral authority to whoever uses it. And it is a word that is most often used by those who abuse it. And it is a concept that we as human beings are so fixated upon because we look at the world around us and we see what appears to be endless injustice. And so we speak often of the lofty ideal of justice. We say that we will spread justice on earth. And it is a word that is used with such ease that we forget its weight, that we forget its meaning. And then there are those who claim that there is no justice. They look at the world around us and they say, surely there is no justice, and if there was a just God, this would not happen. But what is the concept of justice in Islam? Because we all know what our response to that claim is, which is that Allah is indeed the most just, and that the ultimate example of His justice is in the hereafter. That he who kills and is not punished for it in this life will be punished for it in this one. And he who does good and is not rewarded for it in this life will be rewarded in the next one. We believe and we understand this. But do we know what it means to actually internalize that so that we implement justice in our lives here on earth? Because we have a responsibility here on earth to spread justice. And justice is an idea, it's a concept that repeatedly shows itself throughout the Quran and in the Sunnah of the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him. يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوموا لله شهداء كونوا قوامين لله شهداء بالقسط. Oh, you who believe, be upright for the sake of God as bearers of witness to justice. وإن حكمت فاحكم بينهم بالقسط. And if you judge, then judge between them with justice. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان. Allah commands excellence in faith and fairness and justice. And there's a particular story in the Quran that I want us to draw our attention to. It is a story that I think is instructive in showing us, in telling us what this word actually means and what it means to actually live by it. And that, inshallah, will be the focus of our khutbah today. It is a very short story that can be easy to overlook. It appears in Surah Sad. And it is a story of, the story tells of an encounter that happened in the life of Prophet Dawood alayhi salam. It is a story you may be familiar with a story you may have never heard of. But either way, it is important to revisit it and we learn from it. So let us come to the story and go through it verse by verse and see what lessons we can reap from this small incident that happened in the life of Prophet Dawood alayhi salam. Now before we get to the meat of this tale, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides us with a bit of an introduction, a prologue that sets the stage for what we're about to see. He tells us of Prophet Dawood alayhi salam and how he was blessed with so many virtues and so many qualities. وَشَدَدْنَا مُلْكَهُ وَآتَيْنَاهُ الْحِكْمَةَ وَفَصْلَ الْخِطَابِ. And we strengthened his kingdom and we gave him wisdom and the ability to distinguish, to judge. So Dawood alayhi salam was one of the greatest judges that this world had ever seen, perhaps the greatest. People would come to him so that he can judge between them because they trusted that his wisdom was as close to infallible as a human being can get. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights this essential virtue of Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, that he was an embodiment of justice here on earth. And the people around him recognize that, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala testifies himself that Dawood alayhi salam had this virtue. And this is very important to keep in mind, because we will return to this introduction later in the khutbah, when we have a better understanding of why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to introduce Dawood alayhi salam to us in this way. And so we move on to the actual story. وَهَلْ أَتَاكَ نَبْأُ الْخَصْمِ إِذْ تَصَوَّرُوا الْمِحْرَابِ. And did you hear when the two litigants came to him climbing over the wall? Now a litigant is someone who has a legal case, a complaint, and wants to have it resolved. And so we're told that these two came to Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, but they didn't come to him through the front door. They didn't knock on his door and he welcomed into his chambers. No, they climbed over the wall. They climbed the wall of Prophet Dawood alayhi salam's home, of his residence. Why did they do this? We can understand from this detail that Prophet Dawood alayhi salam was not quite open for business at this time. It was late in the night. He was home in his private chambers. He wasn't seeing anyone right now. But these two men felt that this was a very urgent case. And so when they couldn't go in through the front door, they climbed the wall to come to Prophet Dawood alayhi salam. إِذْ دَخَلُوا عَلَيْهِ فَفَزَعَ مِنْهُمْ. They entered his chamber and he was shocked by their appearance. We can only imagine that if it's late at night and you're in your living room with your family or by yourself and in peace, and two strangers suddenly burst in upon you, you would be shocked, you would be shaken. So Prophet Dawood alayhi salam was understandably, from the very beginning, thrown off completely by the sudden appearance of these two men in his midst. قَالُوا لَا تَخَفْ. They told him, don't be afraid. Do not fear. They sought to assure him that they weren't here to cause him any harm. خُصْمَانِ بَغَى بَعْضُنَا عَلَى بَعْضٍ. We're two who have transgressed the rights of one another. فَحْكُمْ بَيْنَنَا. So judge between us. فَحْكُمْ بَيْنَنَا بِالْعَدْلِ وَلَا تُشْتِتْ. And do not judge with injustice. Judge with justice and not injustice. وَهْدِنَا إِلَى سُوَى الصِّرَاطِ. And guide us to the straight path. So Prophet Dawood alayhi salam is in his private chambers. Two strangers have burst in upon him. They've reassured him that they don't intend to hurt him or cause him any harm. They just explained that they have a case. The two brothers have a disagreement and they want him to resolve it for them, because this is what he does. This is what Prophet Dawood alayhi salam is known to do. He is the fair, just judge. And so one of the two men began to explain, إن هذا أخي له 99 نعجة. This is my brother. And we're to understand that brother here does not necessarily have to mean literally blood brother, but someone who is close to him. Perhaps from the same tribe, from the same clan. So he explained, this is my brother. له 99 نعجة. He has 99 sheep. ولي نعجة واحدة. And I have just one sheep. So he has 99 and I have one. He has much, much more than me. فقال أكفلنيها. So he told him, the brother with the 99 sheep told the brother with the single sheep, give your last remaining sheep to me. So he has 99, he has one left, so might as well take that for himself. وعزني في الخطاب. And he overwhelmed me in his speech. And so what's happening here, it's not that the brother with the 99 sheep had asked the brother with the single sheep for his sheep and then taken it from him by force. It's a little more complicated than that. It's that because of his wealth, because of the position of power that his wealth gave him, because in their time having a lot of livestock like sheep, that was an indicator of wealth. That is what gave you wealth. So because of the position of power and authority that his wealth gave him, he was able to take the single sheep from the weaker brother, the poor and weaker brother. So there appears to be an uneven power dynamic here, where one brother oppressed the other because he had more. This is a all too familiar story to us all. And so Prophet ﷺ heard this, and he didn't hear a response from the accused, the brother who was accused of forcefully and wrongfully taking the sheep from the weaker brother. He did not respond, he did not defend himself. And so Prophet ﷺ accepted this as a confession. He has oppressed you by asking for your sheep for you to add your sheep to his. And indeed many close associates, those who are close to one another, oppress one another. And this is a very profound point, and something that I want to dwell on for a moment, which is that we're not presented with a story of two strangers here. It is not that these two brothers don't know one another, or that this is a strict business transaction and they've had no previous experience with one another. No, the way the story is told is that these brothers are intimate with one another. They have a close relationship. And yet, even with that close relationship, one of them still oppressed and hurt the other. And Prophet ﷺ emphasizes this, that indeed it is often those who are close to one another who hurt one another. And this is a cause for reflection in how we deal with people in our personal lives. It's easy to think that the greatest injustice, that the greatest harm is dealt by strangers to one another. But often it's because you are close with your wife, or with your brother, or with your sister, or with your friend, or with your son, or with your daughter, that you can hurt them the way you do. There's a certain vulnerability there. And that is what creates any harm between you, such a great injustice. Because you're exploiting that vulnerability that comes with having such a close relationship. And so Prophet ﷺ emphasized that when he saw these two brothers hurting one another like this. But إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. The ones who don't do this are those who believe in God and do good. They are the exception to this rule. They are the people that do not hurt. They are the ones who are who their intimacy and their close relationship is not a cause of harm but a cause of strength. The believers who do good for the sake of Allah. وَقَلِيلٌ مَا هُمْ. But those, there are only a few of them. There are not many of those who have the strength to not cause injustice to their close ones. So Prophet ﷺ is suggesting that not just do people who are close to one another often hurt one another, but they do this, not just that they hurt one another, but that they do this often. That it can happen even in the most casual circumstances. Because again, of that essential vulnerability. And so after the Prophet ﷺ cast his judgment, he decreed that the brother with the 99 sheep had indeed wronged the brother with the single sheep, and the brother with the single sheep deserved to have his sheep back, and that the brother with the 99 was the oppressor, and that he had indeed done wrong. And so after Prophet ﷺ cast this judgment, a very curious thing happens, which is that the two brothers completely disappear from the narrative. They don't show up again in the following verses. They vanish. We can take this in any number of ways, but the important thing to note is that they left instantly as soon as Prophet ﷺ cast his judgment. And it was because of them leaving so quickly and as soon as he issued his decree that he came to a certain realization. وَظَنَّ دَاوُودَ أَنَّ فَتَنَّاهُ. And Dawood realized, he thought that Allah had been testing him. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent these two men as a test to him. فَاسْتَغْفَرَ لِرَبِّهِ. He begged Allah for forgiveness. وَخَرَّ رَاكِعًا وَأَنَابَ. And he threw himself onto the ground in prostration. And this happens very quickly when you're reading these verses. Just a verse before, Prophet ﷺ had been confidently issuing this decree, this judgment on these two men. And suddenly he's asking and begging Allah for forgiveness and prostrating himself on the floor. And we realize that Prophet ﷺ had failed this test. That Allah had given him this test and that he had not passed. And that is why he prostrated, asking for forgiveness. He had issued the wrong judgment. And whereas before we might have thought that this story is meant to demonstrate to us the incredible and infallible wisdom of Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, we soon realized that it had a very, very different function. To return again to the introduction, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before we began the story of the two brothers, He introduced Prophet Dawood alayhi salam to us specifically as a person who is the most wise and the most just. He specifically introduced him to us as a judge who is gifted with a special and blessed wisdom from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the story that follows is not one that shows Prophet Dawood alayhi salam at his best, but one that shows Prophet Dawood alayhi salam making a mistake. Usually, if I come to you and I tell you, I want to introduce you to someone I know. I want to introduce you to a friend, a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, an architect, someone who has an artist, someone with a real special talent. Usually I will tell you, to substantiate my claim that this is a special person, I would tell you that this person, I would show you him at his best. I would tell you stories of his great achievements. But with Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, we're given the exact opposite. We're showing Prophet Dawood alayhi salam making a mistake, even though he exceeds every single one of us in this room in wisdom and in his capacity to deliver justice. He exceeds all of us. We can never measure up to him, but we are given a story where he makes a mistake. And this is meant to impart to us a special humility. That here Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, if someone like him can make this mistake, and we'll discuss shortly what the verses suggest about why he made this mistake, but if someone like Prophet Dawood alayhi salam can make such a simple mistake, then what does that say about us? What does that say about those of us who stride with confidence, assuming that their understanding of any situation, that their judgment of people they know well and people they don't know well is infallible, is accurate, is not worthy of deeper reflection. This story imparts that humility to us, to be humble in our limited capacity for understanding. And so why did Prophet Hud ﷺ make this mistake? If we recall earlier in the story, when the two men first entered, Prophet Hud ﷺ was shocked. He was shaken to his core. And that did not put him in the right state of mind to judge between these two men. He wasn't thinking as well as he could have. And indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala later reprimands him. He tells him, لا تتبع الهوى. Do not follow the whims of your desires. So Prophet Hud ﷺ was not thinking properly and had been hasty in his judgment. Because when he was presented this seemingly obvious evidence of oppression of a much powerful, much wealthier man taking from the poorer and weaker man, the situation appeared obvious. It appeared obvious who was at fault here. But Prophet Hud ﷺ, as we read in these verses, never heard the accused defend himself. He never heard the other side of the story. Such a simple thing. But because the situation appeared so plain, the truth so self-evident, he had neglected to see that. Which again gives us an important lesson about judging in haste and about presuming to know more than we know, about presuming to know what is in other people's hearts. And so the idea that underlines the story is that essential humility that is involved with being just. An arrogant person cannot be just. A person who has a vested interest in a certain outcome cannot be just either. And it's interesting to think about these two men, how Prophet Hud ﷺ stressed that often it is those who are close who hurt and oppress one another. Well, just as important, the counterpoint, not the counterpoint, but the other side of that coin is that often it's because we are close to other people, because we love them and care for them, that we might perpetuate injustice in the world as well, for their sake. Because when we hear that a robber has robbed a store and taken its possessions, we want justice. But if that robber, what if that robber were your brother, or your sister, or your spouse, or your children, your child? Well then, it's much harder to want that justice. And so you still end up perpetuating injustice by concealing the truth and hiding it for the sake of your loved one. So it's two ways that close relationship can perpetuate and cause injustice. So these are all lessons about the nature of justice contained within this short surah. This short bundle of verses within the surah. And just to be completely clear, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here, it does not mean, or it is not intending to undermine Prophet Dawood alayhi salam. He is simply using him because he is of such high character and of such incredible wisdom as an example for us. But this story very specifically dignifies Prophet Dawood alayhi salam. And this is a small tangent, but I'll mention it regardless, which is that the story in this surah is actually, according to some tafsirs, is actually a response to a story involving Prophet Dawood alayhi salam in the Bible. Where in the Bible, Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, there was a story, not necessarily in the Bible, but in the Christian and Jewish traditions, a story about Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, that he had 99 wives and wanted the wife of a general. And so he sent that general to war to die so that he can have his wife. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. This is a story that was present in the Jewish and Christian traditions at the time of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And this story of Prophet Dawood takes that same idea of the 99, but makes it 99 sheep, and makes it so that it's not concerned with Prophet Dawood, but it's Prophet Dawood who's actually judging between two people who have done injustice and not he himself. So this is a story that still dignifies Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, while also using his exalted status as an example for us who can never be gifted the same degree of wisdom and knowledge and understanding that he was given from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so inshallah, in the second part of this khutbah, we'll discuss how we can take the lessons of this story and internalize them and apply them in our everyday lives. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمد عبده ورسوله ثم ما بعد. Brothers and sisters in Islam, we've now just discussed the story of Prophet Dawood alayhi salam in Surah Sad, of when he encountered two brothers who had oppressed one another and mistakenly judged unfairly between them. And we've discussed the lessons that we can take from this story. In the last few minutes of this khutbah, I want to emphasize that justice, as it takes place, occurs on several different levels. And the reason why the story of Prophet Dawood alayhi salam captures so much of what makes justice is that it is taking place on several different levels. Because Prophet Dawood alayhi salam he has an official capacity as a judge. That is his position. And so he has the authority to judge between these people. People would often come to him because of his wisdom. So he was a judge. And so this is an official capacity, and it's justice taking place on a more almost administrative level. But it's also taking place on the personal level, which is that this story ultimately is about the virtue, the personal virtue of justice in Prophet Dawood alayhi salam. Justice is not something that is merely external to ourselves. It is something that we have to embody. And those of us who are truly just will be just in every single interaction. It's not only the judges at a place like the Supreme Court who are capable of judging fairly between people. We judge and we make decisions that involve judging all the time in our everyday lives, in every single circumstance. We do it so many times a day without even thinking about it. We make conscious decisions to believe, to disbelieve people around us, to treat people around us fairly or not. They happen everywhere, all the time. And to truly be someone just is to understand that and again make it something personal to you. And it's being completely universal in who is given the mercy of your justice. Because justice is a mercy. It really is a mercy. And no one is exempt from it. Just a short, quick story. During the time of Prophet Ali, during the time of Ali ibn Abi Talib, when he was the Khalifa, he once lost a piece of armor that a Jew picked up. And the Jew took the armor and he knew it wasn't his and he tried to sell it on the market. And the Prophet ﷺ, one day while walking through the market, saw the Jew selling his piece of armor. And he knew it was his, and so he told him, "This is mine, you have to give it back to me." But the Jew pretended that he didn't know what he was talking about. He said, "No, this is my piece of armor." And so Ali radiallahu anhu took him to court, his court. And remember, Ali ibn Abi Talib is the Khalifa. He is the head of the entire state. This is equivalent to if the president was walking down the street and saw someone who had something that belonged to him and asked for it and the person wouldn't give it to him. But he took it to court. And when he was in court, the judge asked for a witness to testify on behalf of Ali radiallahu anhu. And Ali radiallahu anhu produced his two sons to testify on his behalf. But the judge said, these are your sons. They have an interest in making sure that you get this piece of armor, so we can't accept them as witnesses. We can't accept family members as witnesses because there's a conflict of interest there. And so the judge ruled in favor of the Jew against the head of the state because he didn't see enough evidence in favor of the position of Ali radiallahu anhu. And when the Jew saw this, when he saw that he had actually been judged, that the judge had actually judged in his favor over the head of the state, well, he became a Muslim on the spot. Just because he was so stunned by what he had just seen transpire in front of him. This is what selfless justice means. And again, this is a story that takes place on the level of a judge in a court. But most acts of justice do not take place on that level. Most of them take place in your personal day-to-day interactions with other people. You see someone who's carrying something heavy up the stairs and you're in a position to help or leave them. What do? You see someone steal some money from someone else. That someone is your friend who's stolen the money. Do you turn your face or do you say something or do you do something? Each one of these little situations, that is where the test of character comes in. Most of us will never end up behind the seat of the judge in a courtroom, but each and every one of us encounters these kind of tests daily. And if we ever think that we are beyond that, if we ever think that we are beyond, for example, perpetuating injustice on people that we love, if we ever think that we are beyond making foolish mistakes, that we are beyond being flawed or being wrong in the way we treat other people, in our judgment of character and situations and other people, of ourselves, then remember that even someone as great as Prophet Dawood alayhi salam could still make that mistake. And so, on the topic of justice, inshallah, after Salah, the United Holy Fund, the United Holy Land Fund will be fundraising for, doing some fundraising for the Eid sacrifices, the Udhiyah, for the children in Gaza. They do a lot of these, they help a lot of, most of their efforts concern helping the children and our brothers and sisters suffering in Gaza. Inshallah, more details will be announced after Salah. So if you can stick around and maybe help our brother or sister in need in Gaza, inshallah, Allah will reward you and reward us all. Jazakallah khairan. اللهم ادخلنا الجنة ونجنا من النار. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا واخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به. واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا. أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك قريب مجيب الدعوات. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله يذكركم وأقيموا الصلاة.